Planning, planning, planning. Emergency and contingency planning is so important. These events really expose any kind of holes that you might have in your contingency and emergency response plans. In particular, each weather event is so different. We can have folks that get trapped in a facility, folks that can't get to the facility. We've had several events where we've gone out after a storm and we found debris that was suspended in electrical lines and created a hazard. So contingency planning and understanding the different hazards and planning for them. I think it's really important to make sure that you have the supplies necessary to respond to an emergency. From my own family, I know that knowing your evacuation route and having a safe place to go is probably one of the biggest lessons learned. There was a time when we did have to evacuate from our house because threat of storm surge, and we had to go through the process of finding a safe location, accounting for our pets, accounting for children, accounting for family members with medical needs. All of that requires a substantial amount of pre-planning, thought, and preparation.
Usually the higher risk industries such as oil and gas, utilities, chemical manufacturing, you'll often find they're adding process safety management requirements to their overall health and safety program. That is very much targeted towards their operational process design. And by doing so, their maturity of mitigating high risk events is something that they're used to. Chemicals are often part of a lot of their operations. So process safety is just a common requirement that folks need to operate in. But those that are in a lower risk sector can still learn from a lot of the good best practices that a process safety management plan would have in place and would benefit from.
I think when we're talking about high risk environments and how they deal with storms and extreme conditions, the thing what we need to acknowledge is that the high risk environment is by its nature already in an extreme state or a near extreme state at basically all times. So if I'm working in a factory or a warehouse somewhere and a major storm comes, it's going to be a different experience for me. If I'm out in an oil rig, I'm a little more used to that kind of extreme condition. So it's really important that everyone, even if you're already in a high risk workspace, have plans in place for when we go from high to extreme. But just understanding, if you've already got a strong safety culture, if you're already successfully mitigating and dealing with high risk situations, that this is just going to be another step on that process, as opposed to being something unfamiliar and something that your staff isn't used to doing already.
It gives an opportunity to look back at your risk assessments, your hazard and risk assessments, to determine if the controls that you originally thought, pre-controls that you originally thought were in place, were adequate. It gives you an opportunity to look back at that, reflect, and figure out, placing the hierarchy of controls in the mindset to determine, do we need to look at engineering controls, administrative controls? Do we need to look at any, substitutions or eliminations of chemicals in our operations to reduce the environmental impact if it were to occur again? As well as the emergency response plan. How well did it go? Did everything go as smooth as it should? Or were there certain kinks that need to be considered in the next round? So I think overall, looking back at your foundational hazard risk assessment is probably a good first step. And then from there, branching out into what fixes do we need to do in order to strengthen our mitigation and posture within the organization.
Make the time to drill. And, even with minor things like fire drills, we need to be doing surveys after the fact. Hey, what went well? What didn't go so well? Did somebody not know what they were supposed to do? And why is that? Was there a systematic failure? Did somebody slip through the cracks on training? Did we not review training with enough frequency. So these are all items to consider on that one.
And I'll just add to that by saying that these used to be century events. We talk about things like century storms, and they aren't anymore. They're happening more and more frequently. So having a good plan in place is step one. But after that storm happens, just know it's going to happen again. So having that review process, going through and checking what worked, what didn't, what do we need to do better next time, is important because it is going to happen again.